Hey everybody. I'm just gonna show you how I build my drums, my kick drums to be specific. But this applies to snares as well. Um, so yeah, I do typically anywhere from 2 to 4 layers of different samples to get a better sample. Um, so what I'll do in this video, I'll show you this pre-made one that I did, and I'll walk through the different plugins of to show you how I got to the final thing, the kick. And then I'm gonna basically do one from scratch, so kind of improv style. And that way you can see exactly kind of the process that I work through all the different samples, and then I'll go through some different plugins, try some EQing, some compression, transient designers, that kind of stuff. So without further ado, I'll show you this kick that I made just a few minutes ago, actually. So pretty decent. It's got a fair amount of punch, a fair amount of body, some top end information. So let's say you're only wearing earbuds, you can still hear this kick in the mix. It's not going to be only low end information that you won't hear in the earbuds. So yeah, I quite like the sound of it. So I'll walk through some of the plugins here. And yeah, I've divided, in this case, the kick into 3 sections. So the sub bass section, which is all the low frequency information and potentially some of the mids, some of that characterness, depending on what the samples are. Then the kick body, which is most of the character, and that includes the mids and probably some of the highs, maybe a smidgen of the lows. I don't want to clash it too much with the kick sub. And the kick snap is going to be um, either it's going to be the actual snappiness, or clappiness, or punch of the kick, or it might just be some of that final top end information. In this case, it's mostly just some top end information, and it's actually quite low in the mix at only like -12 compared to -2 and 0. So it's quite low in the mix, but it adds just enough so that you can hear more of that top end, and it suits it quite well. So yeah, I'll walk through the plugins. So on the kick sub here, basically the only thing I've done was I've chopped off some of the mid and all the top end. So I've done a low pass. I'll solo it from about 250, which sort of tails off at about 5 or 600 or so. And you can see it in this right here. So on its own doesn't sound that good, but it provides all that sub information that I want in the kick. So without it, super weak. Dead sauce. Do not want. Not good. Yeah, so then the kick body, I've done just the opposite. I've scooped out all the low end information, and it's about the same frequency range, but in opposite direction. So yeah, so it's a high pass. Let's hear that soloed, and without this, there's a lot of low end information. Taking that out. So I kept that kick character, I want to call it, or the body. It's quite thin, but I'll show you with the sub. It gives it just enough of that mid information. And I've also added a trans X, so that's a transient designer. So it gives it quite a bit more snap. So without it, not too bad. With it, it really gives that top end snap. It's giving it quite a bit more of a sharp edge. Not too sharp. Like it's not too much high-end sharp. It's just yeah, more of a snap, I guess. So these could maybe be switched, these names. But anywho, that's neither here nor there. So the next kick, um, I've done pretty much like a bell-shaped scoop. So I've taken out um, most of this low-end information. So actually quite lower. These actually could be switched here. Um, Typically, this is what I would do on the body is I'd leave more of the mid and scoop out some of the highs just a little bit. But anyways, so this ended up that I scooped out the lows and there was too much high information and it was bleeding through and it was just kind of annoying to be honest. So I scooped out some of that top end information as well. So without it, you can kind of hear that top end. It's like a shaker or a hat, and I didn't really want that in this kick. So here's what I EQ'd. So this is adding more to what I was saying here. More of that body, that kind of boxy character. Like it's giving the kick more of a, I don't know, like breath, energy, mid goodness. So, and I've taken some of that high out. So all together, oh wait, no, sorry. So also this Trans X I'm using, but not so much at the high end, but about 1.5 to 4K, and it's not too much. It's just to add a little bit more snap. Not a heck of a lot noticeable, but it adds a smidge. So yeah, so once I had all that set, then I set a volume level. So the kick sub was gonna stay at Unity 0, because that's most of what the kick is gonna be. Then what I did was I grabbed I have a controller right here. I grabbed the fader and I just turned it up and down until I found kind of a sweet spot where the two meshed together quite nicely. And it seemed to be about right there. Too low and it's too dark. Too high and it's not what I was looking for. Could probably go about there. And then I added in this next kick. And with too much of it in, you hear that it's too much. So I turned it down quite a bit. And you might think that like, well, if it's too much, then you might as well just not have it in there, but have a listen without it. Quite decent. But with it, it just gives it that small little polish on the top end. And just a little bit more character. So yeah, that's what I decided on. Then once all that level and those plugins were dealt with, then I added a compressor to sort of glue it all together. So I'll take these plugins off. So without it, and then with it. So it's doing a very subtle amount of work here. It's only tightening up the kick like just slightly. It's also because this on this mode I'm mixing in the dry signal, so it's like a parallel compression. So it's adding a little bit of RMS volume, I want to call it. So it's bringing up the level just slightly, but at the same time it's kind of providing more of just a slight bit more of punch to the kick. So I did that, and then I also um, yeah, I added this EQ because the low end information was reaching down all the way to like 10 and 15 hertz. There's a lot of information going on here, like all the way up to -60. And at this range, from about 10 hertz to about 20 hertz, you're not going to hear it at all. It's imperceptible to human hearing. You might be able to feel it, let's say in a big club or something, but most of this information is kind of useless in your mix, like in your song. It's not going to do much. It's going to eat up a fair amount of headroom in relation to other frequencies. Top band, so like let's say 5000K frequencies don't eat up quite as much information as low end information for some reason. So anyways, I did a high pass at 47, and then I also boosted at 33. So it scooped it out, but then I added at 33 to kind of make up some of that lost low end, but at an audible frequency range. So I did that, and I also took out about 270. How much? Yeah, 2.5 dB. So it's getting rid of just a little bit of boxy sound in that kick, and then I added almost a dB at 6.8, and that gives it just a slight boost at that top end. So it's giving a little bit of clarity that you would hear better in the mix, but also, let's say you're listening on earbuds, you won't be able to hear all that sub information. So to make up for that, you kind of mix in a little bit of those highs. You make sure that there's highs in that kick sound, so that when you are wearing earbuds, you will still hear the kick because of those high frequencies. So that's the idea behind that. So without and then with. So it's giving it a little bit of an EQ polish. But there was still a fair amount of low-end information that I can actually cut out. Play it here. Now it's only at about -90, so I've taken out like 30 dB, which is quite good. But I could still take out more, so I've scooped out starting at the 32 mark, but it's kind of a big roll off. So most of what I'm cutting out is about 20 and below. And you can see the difference here. It started at 90. At this end, it dropped down to almost 105. Or so, something like that. And then at this 15 hertz-ish range, that's bringing it down as well. So that's just going to give me more headroom when I mix a song later on. And it might even clear up the kick. Like it might just project that little bit better. I don't know. Who knows? So that is that kick. So I'm gonna now... No, I'll just mute it. I was gonna delete it, but I'll mute it. So now I'm gonna build one from scratch.